Explaining ourselves to others seems like a harmless, even polite habit. But why do so many wise people throughout history say it's actually a form of self-destruction? At its core, it's a defense mechanism, a way to protect ourselves from the fear of rejection. Churchill once said that after you've shared your opinion in a group, you should stay silent with confidence, because the more you try to justify yourself, the less respect you earn. Behind those extra explanations, there's always a bit of doubt, like you're not even sure about your own words, so you keep defending them. And people subconsciously pick up on that. Think about it. You walk into a clothing store, and the more the salesperson tries to convince you to buy something, the less you actually want it. It's the same with words. When you start explaining too much just to get others' approval, you lose the real value of what you said. Now you might be thinking, but sometimes we need to explain things so there's no misunderstanding. And you're absolutely right. That's why not explaining is actually a skill, knowing when to stay silent and when it's really worth explaining. In this video, we'll dig into the psychological roots behind this habit. And trust me, you'll be shocked how often you've weakened your own words just by over-explaining. Then, we'll check out what successful people say about it and break it down in the simplest, most practical way possible. Just stay with me for 9 minutes. You're about to hear things no one's ever told you before. According to great thinkers like Carl Jung, this constant need to explain our actions, emotions, and choices comes from an old emotional wound that never really healed. When someone keeps explaining themselves just to be understood, deep down they're craving something they never got: permission to simply exist as they are. And that's directly connected to self-confidence and self-worth. Don't worry, I'm not going to make this all technical. But let's quickly summarize the psychology behind it, because we'll use it later in the video. Philosophers call this the unlived life. It's what happens when someone is too afraid to face themselves, so they abandon their own beliefs just to get approval. They lose their identity and end up explaining themselves all the time, desperate to stay accepted. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Facing yourself is risky, but it's the only way to live your own life. Now that you know explaining isn't just a simple misunderstanding, let me ask you something. Out of the last 10 times you wanted to share your opinion, how many times did you stop yourself? Not because you might offend someone, but just because you were scared people wouldn't agree. While you're thinking about that, let's go to Churchill's first trick. He said, "If you stop to throw a stone at every dog that barks, you'll never reach your destination." In other words, engaging with every bit of noise around you keeps you from your goal. Why waste time explaining yourself when reaching your goal will speak louder than any explanation ever could? They say history is written by the winners, and as harsh as that sounds, it's mostly true. Because the world moves forward thanks to people who act, not those who explain. The Greek philosopher Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish or stupid. If someone asks about your goals, stand tall and don't answer." I know, that's tough. You might think, if I don't explain myself, people will think I'm lazy or lost. But that fear is exactly what keeps you stuck. They might judge you, laugh, or misunderstand you. But trust me, staying silent is worth it, and it works. If you have the courage to face being misunderstood, you'll stop being afraid of it. So that's lesson number 1. Don't explain your goals. But explaining your goals is nothing compared to what comes next. Benjamin Franklin said, "He who displays his wife and his wallet too openly puts both in danger." Over-explaining your relationships or income only invites trouble. You're literally handing people the power to interfere or hurt you. And let's be honest, If you constantly find yourself spilling your secrets in front of others, that too might come from your unlived life. Here's something interesting. Studies show that couples who post their relationship photos too often on social media actually report lower relationship satisfaction. Why? Because they're trying to get validation, using public approval to cover up private insecurities. If that sounds familiar, maybe it's time to take a step back and look at your relationship as a whole. And if you genuinely feel you're just sharing out of love and excitement, relationship experts suggest channeling that energy into actions that strengthen your bond, not exposing it online, because honestly, most people don't care. Or they get jealous. Very few actually feel happy for you. And those few are usually your closest, most trusted friends. Remember law number 1 from the 48 Laws of Power. Never outshine the master. Don't try to appear better than others, especially not online. Everything we've said about relationships also applies to money. Unfortunately, people often judge you by what's in your wallet. If you're broke, they might treat you badly. If you have money, you'll never know if they like you or your money. There's even a proverb that says, "Never lend money to a friend. You'll lose both." So far, we've learned what an unlived life is and why we shouldn't over-explain our goals, relationships, or finances. But most of us fall into the third trap, when people talk behind our backs. Naturally, we get angry, defensive, and want to explain ourselves. But Stoic philosophers have a brilliant view on this. Marcus Aurelius wrote something powerful in his Meditations. What others say about you is not your concern. That one short sentence says everything. People only see what you show them on the outside, not who you really are inside. Even hypocrites deal with this. They polish their image so others will believe they're good, while hiding their ugly truths. But Marcus Aurelius realized 2,000 years ago that neither praise nor criticism defines your reality. And here's the key. The moment you start defending yourself, you've accepted their judgment. You've given up the power of silence. That mysterious strength that keeps you untouchable. Once you argue, you're in a fight you probably won't win. And we've all been there. So, does all this mean we should never speak up? Of course not. Sometimes, silence can be dangerous, like when your reputation or integrity is truly at stake. But learning when to explain and how much, that's the real art. Take relationships again. A lot of people think that not sharing every detail about their past relationships means they're being dishonest, but total transparency can actually be toxic. Why? Because by unloading every emotional wound from your past, you make your partner carry pain that isn't theirs. It can make them anxious, insecure, or even suspicious for no real reason. Or when you explain a personal decision that you're not even sure about yet, you risk losing clarity, and that's not respect for your relationship. That's losing your individual identity inside it. So, in the end, explaining yourself isn't always wrong, but doing it out of fear, doubt, or to gain approval is. True confidence is when you don't need to convince anyone, you just are. If you're still here, it means you're ready to live your own life, not the one others expect from you. So do it right now. Hit that subscribe button and let's keep building that inner strength together. No more explaining, no more seeking approval, just growth. Click subscribe and let's begin.